Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 121 of Circle of Fellows. I'm Shel Holtz. I am the Senior Director of Communications at Webcor. We're a commercial builder in California, headquartered in San Francisco. And it is my distinct pleasure to moderate a panel of my fellow IABC fellows on a really interesting topic, one that is pretty broad in scope. We're going to be talking about evolving roles and strategic goals. That is, the role of the communicator continues to evolve for a variety of reasons, but always need to be focused on alignment with the goals of the organization. So I guess our challenge today is to square that circle, and couldn't have a better panel to talk about this. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Lori, starting with you.
Thank you. I'm Lori Dawkins, Vice President of Communications and Engagement for an organization called the Provincial Health Services Authority, located in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. We're one of the largest public sector healthcare providers in Canada. And just quickly flavor things like ambulance, specialty pediatric care, women's health, cancer care. The list goes on and on. I could list about 32 things, but I won't. Longtime member of IABC and recently minted fellow, and I'm delighted to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. Mike, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Mike Klein. I'm a communication consultant, researcher, and editor of Strategic Magazine. I'm based in Reykjavik, Iceland, and I was minted alongside Lori as a member of the IABC Fellows body.
Welcome to you both. The community of fellows is delighted to have you among us. Martha.
Hi there. My name is Martha Mazechka, and I'm based in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, the far east of Canada. So I'm on the opposite coast to Lori, and have fond memories of my own time in public health, Lori. So it's always a pleasure to hear you. I do work in strategic communications, adult education and training, and policy research.
And that leaves Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin McCassell, and I'm based in Dallas, Texas, USA. I'm Senior Director of Communications for a company called Healthcare Service Corporation, and we just grew a bunch. We offer a number of healthcare products, or healthcare insurance products, rather, now operating in about 30 states, including a large expansion of our Medicare and Medicaid business through the brand HealthSpring. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and anxious to get started.
Great. And just a note to those who are watching live, please take advantage of the chat option in YouTube Live and share your thoughts, your comments, your experiences, your questions, and become part of this conversation. So I want to start with, in terms of evolving roles, I don't think there's anything that is forcing that evolution faster these days than artificial intelligence. So I wonder, you look at AI and other new channels multiplying, what is your criteria for adopting or actually or adopting or ignoring a tool that might actually advance your strategy, not just the activities or the tactics that you're engaged in? How do you go about evaluating the tools that you're going to bring into the communication mix?
I think you have to look at what value it brings to the outcome you want to achieve. There's always something new in the marketplace. Innovation, I think, is a hallmark for communications, and we can't ignore those creative opportunities when they present themselves. But you can't also just jump on the latest new thing because it's bright and shiny and you haven't yet had a chance to, take it out, kick the tires and see what it'll bring. Sometimes, yes, trying something new may show you those opportunities, but I think we've learned from other issues and other expectations around tools to be more critical and to think about, if we do this, what will be the impact? What are the consequences? There's always good consequences and poor consequences to any decision we make. And we need to take time to think about how that will make a difference going forward to our values and to our own goals for the companies that we work for.
It's interesting. In my organization, Martha, we've been we're sort of going in parallel. Healthcare, public healthcare, you'll appreciate we're often way behind the times, and it is very conservative industry. But in parallel, we're grappling with it in communications, but also as an organization, and even in obviously in the delivery of healthcare services themselves. And it's really, I feel like it's really coming to a head. I know this is an issue in a lot of places, but definitely in Canada, we're suffering from a chronic shortage of humans, of people to provide care, and really trying to decide like where does it make the most sense, and what is the criteria there about when we're going to introduce AI. And so I'm trying to do that, and we have sort of criteria that we're working on there, and then in parallel, we're taking a look at that in our communications function as well. And it's interesting you use the word innovation. This is not radical or new, but recently our organization broadly made Copilot available, like a light version of it. And I find myself testing that innovation muscle. So writing a strategy, and then testing it against Copilot. Like, am I pushing it far enough? Could I be more creative? So I'm trying to sort of use it to stretch, myself. And I know my team members are using it in a variety of ways as well.
I would add that, and this is not new, I mean, we've talked about this since AI became widely available, that using it for responsible purposes to save you time on things that have to get done. And Shell, I've heard you talk about this before too. It's like using it for things that will save you time so that you can spend more time focusing on things that are more strategic, and maybe for your organization, you can focus more on everything else that's changing, right? So that helps you with that. And then as long as you're vetting it and making sure that it's accurate, so that you can like pay attention to everything else that seems to be changing every day. And then really zero in on those things. So we're using our experience like highest and best use, basically.
I'm a solo consultant. I work in a number of kind of small scale partnerships most of the time. So I hear about tons of tools, but I'm not looking for tools that I then have to find uses for. I'm looking for tools that meet needs that I already have. And for me, I do it on the basis of recommendations from other people, particularly other people who do similar work to what I do. So, and once I get those recommendations, I use the hell out of the tools once I figure out what to do with them. So I'm kind of a late early adopter as much as anything else. But I think a lot of the conversation about AI focuses way too much on AI as a productivity tool for ourselves as individuals or for our function as communicators. AI is having much, much bigger implications for the workforce, for society, for the economy. And I think we need to be focusing a hell of a lot more on that and what we can do to help our organizations and our profession get ahead of those trends.
I guess there's two ways to look at the kinds of tools that we're talking about. There's those that we are going to use ourselves, presumably to do a better job of communicating or to be able to do more communicating as AI takes up the slack from a lot of the rote, mundane part of the job. The other are the tools that the organization determines are appropriate to roll out to employees. Obviously, we are not in charge of that. We may be in a position to provide some input and some feedback, but those decisions tend to be made at higher levels. And we then are tasked with introducing those tools to employees. Introduction of tools like that is clearly an example of traditional change management. There's a lot of talk these days about change management being, oh, that was so quaint when we did change management, because change is just so rapid and constant now. But the introduction of a tool we're asking people to use really is old-fashioned change management. There is a start and an end to that. People don't know how to use it, or why it's here, or why I should even bother, to everybody using it as a matter of routine, start and finish. How do you get there? How do you introduce this technology to employees? And I'd like to frame that just a little bit more by noting that it's unlike any other introduction of technology when everybody was going to use that technology the same way. And AI clearly is going to be used differently based on the kind of role you have and the kind of work that you do. So how do you introduce something like this?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I think about the innovations in technology when I think about when automated teller machines started being introduced in the marketplace, and people are like, oh my God, I'm going to get money from a machine. I don't get to talk to the teller at the bank and say hello and ask how their kids are doing, etc. And yet we have a lot of other tools that, because most automatic teller machines operate in the same way, a lot of the tools that we use every day operate in the same way. And yet I'm struck that regardless of what modern iteration of a microwave you have, none of them operate in the same way. And so there is that apprehension when it comes to these new tools, is that we see something, it's like that meme, it's friend shaped, so why doesn't it behave like a friend? We get used to seeing things, and then when we interact with it, it doesn't perform in the way that we think it should, or we start to see things that are perhaps problematic. And I think maybe later in the conversation, we can come back to something that Lori said, which is that human factor. And I think that's perhaps, maybe it's a cultural thing, it's a historical thing. How we interact with machines and technology has a lot of weight to it. Some of it's good, some of it not so good. And to me, the human factor is something that we should probably look at, because you can farm out. I've heard people say, why are you paying a designer $2 or $3 grand to develop a whole brand, look, feel, logos, colors, fonts, etc. And you can just tell AI to come up with the whole package for free. So, there's that element to it as well.
Yeah, I would say sort of in terms of our launch or introducing it to the organization, again, going back to that conservatism, I mean, there was a lot of upfront emphasis on the guardrails, and honestly, we're still not even out of that phase. Phasing is a good way to describe it. We were trying to first focus on AI, not in communications, but in, save productivity time for, say, physicians, and transcribing for patient records and different tangible tasks. So I think the first phase was lots and lots of time spent in establishing the guardrails and what are the controls and the safety, and in our world, lots of time around the patient privacy and confidentiality pieces. And now that we're just starting to launch a lighter version of Copilot for the broad organization, it's sort of been an iteration of that again, like a lesser set of rules. But sorry, what do I want to say? Yeah, sort of letters. And then now I'm sort of curious, people are starting oh, so it's okay. Because of course people have been doing it in secret forever. And now that we're saying, yeah, you can do it. And so now we're sort of in an experimental phase of broader professions. So not the direct care providers, like people like comms, like data and analytics, all kinds of teams across the organization. So we're still figuring it out is probably a nice way to say it.
In comms, we're using, like a lot of big organizations, we have a group of people who are dedicated to AI and what makes sense for our organization. And in healthcare, as some of you know, it's like AI has already been used for a number of things that help us serve our customers and our healthcare members. But I'll give a very specific example that's going to help comms. And Shell, you did this because I was asking you some questions about your own recent internet experience. We upgraded our internet a couple of years ago, and we're about to go to the next phase of that. Using the AI work that's already been done for other purposes within our company, specifically around search for different purposes. Mm-hmm. Now we're looking at with the vendor that we choose for the next phase of this internet, can we use our own application for search to make it so wonderful that it's precise and brings you exactly what you want? Because, you know, in large organizations, you may use SharePoint, you may use other applications, but there's always so much information. And no matter how brilliantly you do this, your search won't be optimal. It kind of sucks. We're now looking at that and having that group vet, can we think of ourselves as the third party, embedding that into the next phase of our internet. And right now it looks really promising. And we're not being the guinea pigs. It's the work's already been done. Now it's piloting it, which I think is really exciting, because if we can finally get past that and make search what it should be so employees can be more productive, I think that's an outstanding use of something they've already been working on. It is already developed and ready to go.
Yeah, I can tell you that when we introduced AI where I work, the focus was on permission. We definitely talked about the guardrails. That was the first thing we did, was publish the policy and make it available and make sure everybody was aware of it through multiple channels. But then it was really about telling people, look, you have to do R&D. Nobody knows yet how, say, a project engineer can take advantage of this, or a superintendent. So the idea was to get people to, as Ethan Mollick puts it, the professor from Wharton who writes about AI, invite AI to the table for everything you do, to see where it makes sense, where can it help automate your workflow and save you time so that you can invest that time in things that are more high value. And in order to reinforce that, we told the stories of employees who did. That helps, right? When they see other people like them starting to use this, and they go, oh, maybe I could get some of that benefit myself. I don't know if any of you have gone down that path, or what have you done to make people feel comfortable? I mean, you know, Mike, you mentioned before we started recording, that employees are feeling scared right now, and communicators among them. It's hard out there to find work in this field, in marketing and communications. People aren't getting invited for interviews. I'm seeing LinkedIn posts from people saying, I've sent out resumes to 400 companies who had openings and didn't get a single interview, and look at my resume. What are we doing to raise that comfort level?
I mean, there's about 6 different questions unpacked in that question. I mean, the state of the comms job market, the state of AI, the state of the workforce, the mindset of people in this space, particularly senior folks who are, still looking for permanent jobs and things like that. I mean, when you said that you were celebrating your 8th anniversary at WebCore, my God, you are the rare exception for somebody, somebody senior moving into a long-term full-time job. There are very few examples that I'm hearing about that. And I spend a lot of my time talking with other communications people around them. The 2 things that jump out at me is, one, there's a lot of talk about AI helping us, giving us time to do more strategic work. But you're also looking at some macro workforce trends. Nestle just announced a whole raft of layoffs. It's going to hit about 10% of their white collar workforce. You've got Salesforce, you've got other big players who are saying, we're not going to let you hire anybody unless you can prove AI can't do the job. And so we're all in this kind of huge transition here. But even that's just a transition within a transition. I mean, the big transition, which I'm calling the big shift, is that you've got, AI pressurizing what it considers commoditized white collar work. You've got a surge of young graduates coming into the workforce, not just in established markets like the US, Canada, and Britain, but in a place like India, where those are like tens of millions of people coming into the workforce. And then you've got this pressure on hierarchy in organizations. You're going to have fewer managers, a lot faster decisions and a lot more people who are going to need to be in a position to take some degree of initiative. And I don't hear of too many people, particularly in our space, who are addressing what's happening at the convergence of those three trends. So, and I think what's happening at the convergence of those three trends is really going to determine the future of communication as a profession, internal and external. Now, I also see this as a huge area of opportunity for those who can somehow find a way to survive the next, year to 3 years of this potentially gruesome transition. But, on the other side of it, communication is going to become far more fundamental as a corporate core competence. Because if you're automating a lot of the production work, why is it that you want people to make consistent decisions, or why do you want why should people spend extra money to buy your brand versus somebody else? And those are communication roles. They're not pure management roles, and they're certainly not production.
We do have a question from somebody who has joined us in real time. Diana asks, as you implement digital tools and are also adding in more face-to-face connection are you adding more face-to-face connection in your communication strategy? So you have the ATM convenience and the bank teller moment. Mm-hmm. Both feel important.
Yeah, yes. Sorry. Yeah. You go first, but yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And we encourage, like in our own organization, all of the senior leaders have ongoing town halls. The communication professionals who support them are encouraged to do other things to make sure that they're having FaceTime with people. Even if you have to do some of it virtually, it's not quite the same, but we use Viva Engage pretty extensively now in our organization, and it's become much more popular. And for the senior leaders who are willing to post routinely, or even do a live Q&A where people can come in if they're available and ask questions in the community, that's really helpful, because that's a virtual connection. It's not face-to-face, but it's pretty close because they know the leader is going to respond. And the leaders who are the most, I don't want to say popular, but the ones that are more willing to do things like that are the ones who better engage, and the ones who I think employees are more willing to follow into the fire, so to speak, because they know the leader's willing to come out and tell it like it is and answer their questions and do it on a regular basis. Even if the answer sometimes is, I don't know, but I'll get back with you, they do that. I think that there's no substitute for human interaction, face-to-face, or as close as you can get to that when you can do it. There just isn't.
I wholeheartedly agree. I was going to say, my organization, we could all say in a period of great change, but very quickly in my province last year, all people vying to form provincial government campaigned on a review of healthcare in our province and the health authorities delivering that care. My organization is significantly impacted by that. We're still waiting for some decisions, but as part of that, on March 31st of this year, my CEO and my board were replaced on the same day to make way for this review process. And the greatest things in demand right now, are that face-to-face communication. So I guess, going back to the question asked, it's more important than ever before. And I almost shamefully admit that, yes, we have sort of the AI and the digital tools work sort of going on in parallel, but the value of what I and my team members are offering in terms of face-to-face communication at the shoulder, counsel to CEO to executive partners is stronger than ever before. As I'm touching base with them, because teams are shrinking. We did have a significant number of layoffs over the summer. I was like, okay, look, if we have to scale back, what's most important to you now? And 100% of it is that kind of at the shoulder, face-to-face, help me show up well. And I find that those leaders are, because they're also vulnerable. They're questioning, they're almost sort of turtling, and they need help to be courageous. And so it's not just about key messaging, but how do I present myself? How do I show up in the ways that Robin described?
Just to
You know,
add one thing. I'm sorry, Lori.
yeah.
finish your thought. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, okay. It's just,
Well,
I'll just say in answer to the question, like I'm taking heart and knowing that, you know, what my team members, our profession is positioned to offer seems to have higher value than I've seen in the last 5 years. Like it's just,
and what I was going to add to that quickly was the role of any senior leader, whether it's your CEO or somebody else, if effective communication, they're just not strong communicators. They're like everybody else. Like you said, they're vulnerable. They're afraid to be in front of an audience, whatever that is. It's like the more we as communication professionals can coach and help them, and the more that they're willing to do that authenticity, and I know that word gets used a lot, but it's like, that is huge, because if you have somebody who goes up who appears tone deaf, and it might just be that they're scared, but it's how people perceive how their body gestures and how they're saying things. That's really important too. And I think, like I said, for leaders who don't naturally have that ability, the more they're willing to let us help them, the more effective I think they will be. And we've all seen that happen a million times.
Well, let's kind of continue down this path of got kicked off with the idea of face-to-face communication, which, by the way, one of my very first conferences, I heard somebody to say that we are hardwired for face-to-face communication, and anything that isn't is a corruption of face-to-face. And that has always stuck with me. But part of the idea of face-to-face is that it's the purest of two-way communication, which to me is, I mean, you know, communication is two-way. That's the definition of it. It's the sending and receiving of information. It's an exchange of knowledge or information. How do we measure the effectiveness of our two-way engagements? Have we, you know, there's just such a big part of this is based on listening, and are we paying attention to any metrics to assess what we're hearing, not just, you know, what we're getting across? Mike, did you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
It's interesting you asked that. Again, it's kind of two questions. One is, are we measuring face to face, you know, the effectiveness of face to face, and that ties into a larger question of, are we measuring the effectiveness of any of our communication in a meaningful way? And there's so many metrics out there that dance around this, whether it's employee engagement or sentiment-based stuff. But very few people that I talk to, and very few people I'm hearing from, are talking about message recall or talking about, you know, what they're getting out of the interaction. There are very few open-ended questions being asked about this stuff. When one of the great things about AI is there's nothing better than AI to synthesize and summarize large volumes of open-ended data for effectively for nearly free. And we now have the ability to measure this stuff. I mean, you know, the tick the box 5-question survey at the end of a face-to-face of, you know, do you think you understand what was said, as opposed to saying what was said. You know, I think we could be a lot more clever, and if we are more clever, we can demonstrate our value at this particularly critical time.
I think it's important to remember that hearing is a sense. It's a passive process, whereas listening is an active process, and listening is an ability. What people want in the workplace, in their community, is to be seen and to be heard. And to me, that's the fundamental question of when we look at the effectiveness of our communications. Have we heard and seen our employees, our constituents, our board, our CEO? And how do we represent that? Have we seen them the way they want to be seen? And it's an area that I think, with the work that I do primarily in terms of policy research, where I do a lot of interviews with key informants and people whose experience is going to inform the development of policy and programs. Being seen and being heard is what matters to them. And while AI does allow you to synthesize a great deal of data, people are not just data points. They're people who interact with our services, with our programs, with our products, and how we listen, how we hear them, how we see them, and how we understand them are those critical metrics for me in terms of the success of what we do.
I don't think those are incompatible ideas. I think, if anything, they're very compatible, because one of the great things about AI is it provides the ability to analyze words and to present words, as well as just analyzing and presenting numbers. And I did some research for LUMAPS earlier this year. And, when you ask people what would improve communication, the vast majority, or the more precisely, the largest plurality, was saying more cultural interactivity, more listening, more demonstration that you're getting what we're saying and that you're taking action. And at the same time, when you're asking better questions and you're able to deduct and pull out insights from them, rather than just on a scale of 1 to 10, what did I think of the conference? It's you're getting much richer data, and you're enabling a much more interactive quality of listening.
And like in our organization, we measure everything, and that resides within my team. That's part of one of my teams focuses on that monthly and quarterly. And I think what y'all are saying resonates very much. And I think it's the context. So one of the things we do all the measurement that most people do, and we look at now sentiment and things like that, because then you start to see trends. But typically, if we see a jump in anything, any one of our channels, if it's good or bad, or if we see in town hall scores that something is off, like compared with what we typically see, then we look at the rest of the organization. And quite frankly, we look beyond that. It's like, what triggered this response? Yeah. Because that's really helpful insight for senior leaders to know. It's like, by the way, this happened on this day. And then we looked at what was going on across the organization. What were the key conversations? What's going on, in our case, in the United States that might have triggered something, right? And it's like, and you can almost always, you go, there it is. And so then you can provide that. So we're not just giving the numbers, we're saying we think this is what caused that. And so typically we'll summarize some of those key things if we see a change even in our employee publication that goes out twice a week, it's digital. Every other week, there's a message from our CEO. And it's always one of the most popular things. It's like the first story, even though it's his message. And it's always very popular, but depending on what else is going on, it might be even more popular. It resonates even more. And so we'll look at, okay, why did that one elicit even more likes, comments, whatever? And almost always there's something we can attribute it to that is helpful insight, not only for us, but also for senior leaders when they're thinking about how they communicate things in the future.
I want to switch gears in this discussion of communication and communicators and communication leaders evolving. I was talking to the chief administrative officer at a company recently. He was telling me that they have, over the last couple of years, introduced short form video to the communication mix. They've got a couple of hundred of them that they have produced, and the employees view them at just a spectacular rate. I mean, any communicator would envy the open and view rate that these videos get. Now, short form video is a relatively new trend. It really took off with TikTok. It had been building up a little bit before that with Instagram. But now you've got, Gen Zs and to a large extent millennials pay more attention to those. They're not patient enough anymore to sit and watch a half-hour video. But creating an effective short-form video is a new skill. How do communication leaders in particular, who are busy with strategy and interacting both up with the leadership and down with their own teams, stay current on all of this stuff so that they can lead these efforts, as opposed to saying, oh, those kids and their short-form videos?
Well, it's a story. I mean, we've always told short form stories. That's what a nursery rhyme is. That's what a fairy tale is. The novel is a relatively new invention, if you want to think about it, in terms of the last 4 centuries. So I think what they have discovered is a way to tell their stories and they're connecting with people because something in their story is resonating with people who have a shared experience or shared identity or shared community.
Sure, but for the communication leader who is not paying a lot of attention to the technology because they're busy implementing strategy, how do you stay on top of all this stuff? How do you know which of these trends is something that should translate into the way your organization communicates, whether it's with employees or with customers or any other stakeholder audience?
I mean, I
Great
think I'd be the
case for reverse mentoring.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll be the first to admit I am not leading that curve, but I'm relying every day on the people in my team across the organization. And I find that there's certain pockets within our really diverse organization. For example, the public health for the Center for Disease Control, some younger communicators there, but also they really have adopted that short form video as well as a way to, it started during COVID and it is just sort of escalated. So like I said, it's not a really sexy answer to say that it's not coming from me, but it's coming from the team up, and me just being primed as much as possible to say, yes, that sounds great. Like,
I also has a bias for text though, so text isn't going away. Short form video is great, particularly if you're good at it and if people respond to your personality on it. But text isn't going away. If anything, text is going to be at least as important as it is now, because that's what's going to guide the AI crawlers and the AI search engines or the AI platforms to get your information to the right people at the right time.
Excellent point, Mike. I think in the early days of Twitter, that was the beauty of how do you tell your story in 140 characters.
Absolutely. The other thing I've noticed where we can be helpful is that you've got some leaders, and even some who are young, it's not a matter of age or their generation. It's like that's one of their things. They don't want to be on video, or they're intimidated by it. What I have found is sometimes you then coach and work with the ones who are, to say, this is what you need to say up front. Like, you kind of help them get there. It's like, if this is going to be short, you got to get to the point. Like we write with Axios Media Smart Brevity format, right? So same thing with the video. It's like, get to the point up front, make a couple of salient points, and that's enough. You don't have to cover or boil the ocean or whatever metaphor you want to use. And what I find is then there are people who watch it and see, like if we post it in one of our channels and people go, oh, that's cool. And then a leader goes, well, that's cool. She's getting a lot of attention. I want that. And then so they're the ones that come along saying, okay, I'm willing to try it now because they've seen that it's resonating with our employees.
Let me come at this from a different direction. When I was consulting, ran into a lot of senior communication executives who stopped going to conferences. They stopped taking workshops or attending webinars. They had attained a lofty position as a VP or maybe a chief communication officer, and they were beyond that. And I think that is a very dangerous approach to take, especially these days. I think continuous learning is a requirement, no matter what level of the organization you're at. So how do we tell this to those communicators who have reached those levels, who think that they have gone beyond the need to continue learning? Even those who, send their staffs off to do all of this stuff.
I think we need people like you, Shell, who model being open to finding new things. I think that all of us, to me, in the group that I work with, both locally and internationally, is that curiosity, is that openness to seeing new things, hearing new things, learning about new things. Quality improvement is about learning from something that you've done so that you can make it better. And feeling that you have arrived, to me, seems like, well, there's no more growth, there's no more life, there's nothing else to nurture. And that's a difficult place to be in if you feel that that's as far as you've got in terms of your learning. I think every day that we learn something new is a great day. So how we communicate that message is by offering and showing the relevance of the meetings, the sharing of information, the learning of new things together, and modeling that kind of approach also in our workplaces.
I think it's carrot and stick. I mean, part of it is that I see and hear a lot, not just from senior communicators, but from, junior and particularly mid-level communicators who are talking about change fatigue and they're too tired and they don't have time and, the companies aren't giving them enough support. A couple of years ago, I offered a free seminar, 45-minute seminar on how to build a basic business case. And about a couple hundred people registered for it, maybe 20 showed up. It's not just simply complacency. There's almost like a studied indifference to all of this, that this is somebody else's problem. Now, the issues in the job market may force some of that to rectify itself. Basically, if you're going to be competitive in this market, you've got to take initiative. You've got to demonstrate that you're taking initiative. And, you got to show something different from the massive 500 resumes for every job. But there is still this culture of conservatism, complacency, and cowardice at all levels that really needs to be shaken up.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, Mike. I absolutely do. I think about my own team. Like I recently, some folks were added to my team, and they are all young. I think everybody on my team is younger than me, but they are so smart and so bright. And every conversation I have with them, I learn from them as much as I might be helping them with something. And it's like, to me, that those kind of conversations are invaluable. When I think about, okay, so I think almost everybody on this call, maybe we either have a certification of SCMP or ABC or whatever it might be, having to recertify every year and making yourself go through that, even if you're somebody who doesn't want to, it's so helpful. Like every time I go, if I speak at a conference, which I'm blessed to do, it's like, I love that opportunity because I get to hear everybody else. I get to hear from interesting people from other companies that are going to help me with challenges that we're dealing with. And like, why wouldn't you want that? Like, I always want to be the person in my team, whether I'm in a senior role or not, who says, yeah, let's give that a try. Like I always say, anything is possible. And that's not always true, but I'm willing to give it a try. And I'm like, I don't understand that when I have seen people before, not in comms, but when I have talked to other people who had dealt with a layoff or something, and say like, well, the company's offering you this opportunity to be retrained in these engineering skills or whatever it might be, so that you can still be valuable to XYZ company. And they're like, no, this is what I went into the profession for. This is whatever. And it's like, well, that was 25 or 30 years ago. And the world has turned a few times since then. And I think comms professionals should be the same way. Somebody said, we have to stay curious. Of course you have to stay curious. You should expose yourself to everything. And maybe it's not all for you, but doing that is going to keep you relevant in the time we're in now and throughout your career until you decide you don't want to do it anymore.
One of the things that has changed is reputation management over the years. That used to be a lot easier because it was a lot more concentrated. Now it spans your employees, your customers, your regulators, even algorithms are playing a huge role in influencing reputation. Where should communications own the work? And if we are going to be co-owners of any of this, where does that happen? And how do we build those alliances with our fellow co-owners of those types of communications? And I'm sorry, Mike, I know that's another question with about 6 questions in it, but.
I'll say this quickly, and I know other people have got good responses, so I'm going to be quiet. But one of the things that my leader is the head of the department. And one of the things that she drills in with people, and I drill it in with my team constantly, is like, of all the things we do, we have 2 things we're really responsible for. One is enhancing our brand, and one is protecting the reputation of the company. Now, since I lead internal comms, that's a different viewpoint, but in an age where everything internal is external, it's like everything we do, we have to think about like that. How would that play externally, even though it's internal? How does that, is everything we're doing reflecting well on our brand as a company? And sometimes people go, well, it's a lot more complicated. I'm like, I'm not. If you boil it, it's not. If you boil it down, these are the two things you're most responsible for, regardless of what your role is. And once people begin to understand that, then it's like, okay, right. So it makes you think about everything that you're writing, everything that you're creating in video. Like, what am I doing? Is this the right message, not only for our target audience, but if it were released to a different audience, would it resonate well with them? Would it reflect well on our brand?
So aligned with you, Robin. I work for an organization of 29,000 people spread across the province, and it's always every little thing, whether it's internal or it's internal, I'm always assuming it is 5 minutes away from being, leaked. So I intend everything to be aligned in terms of reputation management. And I think, Shell, the question was like, who owns it? I mean, obviously there are so many contributing factors, but I do put a stake in the sand and say that I do think that my team are one of the most significant owners of that. And it comes down to a lot of what Robin was talking about. We are sort of the conscious, we have subject matter experts across the organization who intend to communicate something, and they believe passionately that is the right thing, but we are that line in terms of, hey, is this the message that you would want to receive? Like, whether you're a patient or your family or you're an employee, is this the time that you want to receive it? And these are very simple questions, but being disciplined to bring that every day and not get complacent and kind of go, whatever, like, I got too much going on, it's good enough. But that bringing that discipline to the profession, both internally and externally, and really bringing humanity to it, I think does up your game in terms of owning and contributing and upholding organizational reputation. And I take it very seriously. It also comes back to me, like, this is aligned even with service and meaningful service. And I have to believe in the reputation, and I have to believe in what I'm doing. So
it's where your values come in too, Lori, because I think if, as a person-focused organization that health tends to be in terms of patients, families, employees, is what we're doing here, does it contribute to upholding a person's dignity? Are we treating people respectfully? Are we treating them the way that we would like to be treated? And being able to assess if there is alignment or a disconnect is important. That component of self-reflection when it comes to reputation management, I think perhaps it's not always at the forefront unless there's a crisis. What could we have done better? What could we have done differently? But I think, as part of that curiosity, not just turning outward to what employees are doing or what the public is doing, but how are we functioning in organizations that uphold the values that we promote to the public or our funders or our sponsors, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Something interesting that's happened at PHSA, I guess 18 to 24 months ago, it feels like refreshed organizational values. But I live in a province and a place in the world that is very much committed to truth and reconciliation with Indigenous people. And we worked with a Coast Salish knowledge keeper, and we introduced a set of Coast Salish teachings in parallel. So foundational to the organization, you have a Western perspective with values, and you have these Coast Salish teachings as well. And what I find interesting in all of this around the reputation management is that could have been received as performative, even though the work was done in the right way. And instead, the teachings are so simple. It's going to feel like advice that your mother or your grandmother offered to you, that people have really leaned into that, and they vocally challenge leaders of the organization, and even I as the leader of communications, when they feel that something is out of line reputationally. And is it 100% of people? No, of course not, but it is a really significant portion. It has been such an interesting movement, and something that is kind of holding our organization as we are in a period of really great change and not quite knowing what we're going to be a few months from now. But that has been an interesting litmus test in the reputation work.
I'm trying to work something in here because I think it's, when we're talking about particularly internal communication and reputation, we talk about alignment, we talk about, trying to minimize the gap between the two. But at the same time, when you look at how organizations value reputation versus how they value performance, they're fundamentally different. At a certain level, they're different games. And you have to be conscious about whether you're trying to do something to improve performance or improve reputation, and then look at how they align with each other. Because you look at the share price of big companies, for instance, performance influences the share price in one way, but but the reputation influences it in terms of how people pay above the cost of doing things. So performance is, how efficient you are and how effective you are at delivery, but reputation is that over and above that. And so you've got to be conscious of both. I mean, I never really gave much thought to reputation management really until this year, until I started working with some reputation companies. And it's a completely different way of looking at things, even if it deals with a lot of the same stuff.
I want to go back to something Martha said earlier. You wanted to revisit this notion of humanity. And Mike, you talked a bit about what we are facing in terms of the displacement of the workforce as a result of AI and other factors. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts with the experts talking about this. Ezra Klein's interviews, Kara Swisher's interviews, some on some very AI-focused podcasts that are not about marketing and communication, but really the business of AI. And the consensus is these job losses are coming. There is absolutely no question about it. If AI can reduce the amount of work that it takes an accountant to do by 50%, don't you need one instead of two accountants? So we've also heard from Amazon that they plan to automate all of their warehouses to require very few people. We're going to see an unemployment spike, and all of these arguments I hear that, oh no, it's just augmenting the workforce. Well, both things can be true. It is going to augment the work that a lot of people do, but it's also going to eliminate a lot of jobs. And as we communicate both internally and externally, as this is going on, how do we maintain the organization's humanity? How do we present that humanity as we go through this economic and societal disruption that is inevitable? And I think it was Kara Swisher said, if you romanticize the Industrial Revolution, you've never read Dickens, right? So this is one of those kinds of changes to society and work. How do we continue to demonstrate humanity as this inevitable change happens?
I think the main thing is to stop trying to demonstrate humanity. I mean, there's so much performative stuff that's going on in space. And there's so many, so much performative language, so many performative values, principles, and unbreakables that all of a sudden there's a shift in the political environment and the economic environment. And these go unceremoniously out the window. I mean, I think the whole social contract between employees and employers is going to have to be rethought as this process continues, not just because of the people who are going to find themselves unemployed, but because those who survive are going to have a fairly skeptical view about the intentions of their organizations going forward. I mean, this may end up showing up in higher salaries for those who survive, or they may show up in much more autonomy or much more, I don't know what that's going to look like because we don't know what that's going to look. But I'd say the first thing is, if you're in a hole, stop digging.
I'm going to hold out hope. I hear what you're saying, Mike, and I partially agree with you, but I'm going to hold out hope based on, and this is one woman's opinion based on my own experience. because I lead a pretty big team now, and I've done this in other organizations. And one of the things I found had nothing, it was how I interacted not only with my team, but also the environment I set up where you could have fun, or you could, and this is going to sound very tactical, but it actually has a very strategic intent. I would make sure that we had fun and we laughed every day on our calls, or I would create some goofy award that actually had meaning to them as a way of pointing out to people like, I see what you're doing and we're recognizing it and you're valuable. Having humanity when they're dealing with a crisis or they're having a problem, and knowing that I'm approachable and they can come to me. And doing some things, if you can, again, I'm on the internal side, being doing things with your workforce that really don't have anything to do with work. They're just silly fun, like the things that we lose when we leave childhood, and bringing back some of that mischievous, goofy, whatever, where people go, God, that was fun. Like that was just a break in the day or whatever. It's like what I have seen in doing a lot of tactical things like that, if you plan it appropriately, is that people are going to be more likely to follow you, is not wrong, but follow you when there's something where you really need their help, or when there's a crisis, or when it's something you can sort of bank. So when there's something that's not going well in your organization, people trust that we're going to get back to that at some point. Now, again, AI, whole other animal. What's going on in the bigger environment. I mean, hey, I live in the United States, good times. There's a lot going on. But I still hold out hope for that based on my own experience of what I've seen that I've done, and I've seen other people do like that, that humanity still matters. And it helps and it works.
Yeah. I was going to say, and one of the, I talked about those teachings, but there's one within there. And the English translation is good medicine. And it's about, you have a choice every day to be good medicine or bad medicine. And so you yourself are the medicine. And this has just really taken off. And it is about, humanity. And yeah, more than anything. So people right now, as we're doing hard things, as we are experiencing job loss, as things are shifting very dramatically in our organization, trying to take the mindset and hearing this echoed back that we get it, hard things are coming our way. But how we do it, they've really taken to heart, how we do it is just as important as what we're doing. And that definitely aligns for me as a communicator. It's like, okay, this is my moment. I can adopt that, how we do it. Yeah, I'm all over it, and that's all about humanity.
I'm not against humanity. I'm against fake humanity. And I think what you're talking about is, how do you find what's consistent and what's true in the face of all of the stuff that's happening?
Robin, you were talking about doing the fun stuff. I think that brought to mind the need for people who manage communication efforts to stay on top of trends with their audiences too. I was looking at data not too long ago that says there is a real sharp decline in the number of employees who want to go out after work and do something extracurricular. They don't want to go to the company picnic. They don't want to go to the holiday party. They don't want to go out for drinks with their colleagues after work. They want to go home. And this is particularly true in Gen Z and to some extent millennials. I think, the going out after work or going to the company event is sort of baked in to the generations older than that. But this is a trend. And I think we have to find ways to engage that way, acknowledging that this is something that's in the minds of that demographic.
Totally agree. And I'll just share this. It's just a tactic, but it's so sweet. And my own team's scattered. Some in Chicago where we're based, some in Texas where I am, some are remote, some are in other states. But here in Richardson, they just took it upon themselves. Whatever the holiday is, they do the most fun whatever. And I think they're just taking turns doing it. And I came in, I'd been home for a while after I had a recent medical procedure. And when I came back in, my whole office was decorated like a kid would love it for Halloween. Guess what? It made me feel so much better about coming back to the office. And it was sweet. And there was little treats waiting and stuff like that. And it's like, if you spur that kind of culture where other people want to do that too for each other, because they care about each other and like each other. Like, I'm so ready to put one of those Nerf shooters on all of their desks.
We
So
do
when
that,
they-
Robin. We have Nerf battles in the office.
just to release some stress, because it's fun. It's like, you have so much going on in your personal life. There's so much going on with what's going on in the world, and there's so much going on with your office. Do something to get them kind of get the right brain engaged again and relax and go, okay, what do we have to tackle today? Because it is hard. And Mike, the things you said are, yes, absolutely. I don't disagree with you, but it's like, do something, because man, we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah, and we are out of time. 20 seconds left. Just enough time to thank this panel for a great discussion and to let everyone know that episode 122 is scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, November 20th, on Preparing Communication Professionals for the Future. Panelists are Diane Gajewski, Sue Human, Theomary Karamanis, Letty Narvez, and Jennifer Waugh. So we have 5 plus me. So it'll be a busy panel. Look forward to seeing everybody next month on that panel. And again, thank you all for a terrific discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.